Welcome, everybody. I am Tyler Jenks of Lucid Investment Strategies, and with me, of course, is Sawcruhteez, also of Lucid Investment Strategies.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello. Sorry about that feedback there. Just making sure that the YouTube wasn't playing back at us.
Oh, good.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Sawcruhteez, and I will be happy to join. And I'm very much looking forward to this discussion that we have set aside for today. And hopefully, I can remember to get everything set up right so that the proper screen is being shared when we're talking about some charts. So, thanks for having me on, Tyler.
Yeah, that's great. We've had a couple of interesting discussions today on a number of subjects, but we apologize for yesterday. Apparently, we were talking without the screen shares coming up. I think we've taken care of that problem right now. What we're going to talk about today, though, is this weird thing going on with Litecoin versus Bitcoin. And we asked the question, is Litecoin blazing the trail in this bull market for Bitcoin? Is it leading the way? And Sawcruhteez pointed out to me a couple of very interesting things that have happened recently. So I built some charts and he's got some charts. We'll try to take a look at that. But it poses a very interesting question for me, which is, since I think there's no real fundamental basis that is superlative to the Bitcoin fundamental basis with any of the other projects, it's difficult for me to recommend or to put my clients, or for me to get interested in them. I think everybody knows by now that I am a very long-term investor, and I don't like the idea of putting money into something that I don't feel is fundamentally sound. Even the most fundamentally sound asset classes go through periods of time where their trends go from up to down. And that gives me enough to worry about, as opposed to buying a penny stock or buying something that's been shilled by the Wolf of Wall Street, or being shilled in the crypto space, to the extent it's very difficult to tell what's good from what's not good. Undeniably, in all of those cases, people can make a lot of money. But that's a very different question for me when dealing with other people's money, in what I feel comfortable making decisions to either go long or get out of, or sometimes short, even very fundamentally sound things. And when I talk about fundamentally sound things, I mean, for example, Tesla is a brilliant company that doesn't make any money and someday might be fundamentally sound. But in the meantime, I've got enough confidence in the institutional investors that have confidence in that particular project that I don't mind buying it or selling it and studying it and even shorting it sometimes, because I don't have to worry about the fact that it's not a big scam, as in the other three examples I gave, which I believe many, if not most, of the cryptos are all of the kind of things that are shilled by people like the Wolf of Wall Street, and almost all penny stocks. There are some great penny stocks that are fundamentally sound, but good luck finding them, because there's no research on them. Institutions don't follow them. They're just little names on a pink sheet. And most of them are shilled by thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of brokers that are very similar to the Wolf of Wall Street. If you don't know all of that stuff, stay away from all of that stuff, because believe me, that's what goes on. So from my perspective, it's difficult. You've never heard Leah and I talk about even Ethereum or Litecoin or Monero or Cardano or any of the other ones. But I've been very intrigued by those that do follow it, are very good technical analysts, and make money, and can make a lot of money. And one of the best at that I've seen is Sawcruhteez, which is one of the reasons that we've joined forces because it's great to be able to look at all asset classes from a technical point of view. I like to look at them in a long-term viewpoint. Every once in a while, I get intrigued by intermediate term moves, which I still believe Bitcoin is in, and therefore the other cryptos are in. But I almost never, because of the nature of what I do, get too intrigued with real short-term trades, except in my own personal account, but not for clients or for consulting clients and that sort of thing. So with that as the introduction, this is going to be fun. Then we'll pull up some charts. And obviously, a lot of stuff's going on with the gold market. We talked a little bit about it before. A lot of stuff is going on with the stock market because of things that happened today with the employment report and a number of other things as the week has just come to a close. So what we're going to try to do, we've only got about an hour. We're going to start off with this theme of Litecoin. And we're not just talking altcoins in general. Today we're talking Litecoin because of the observations that Sawcruhteez has made. But I did want to give him a chance to kind of respond to what you've all heard from me ad nauseum for a year and a half. And Sawcruhteez has got a very different take on it. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Sawcruhteez, and let you defend why you are interested in all this crap.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I certainly appreciate your perspective, and I also really appreciate you taking the time to take a stand for what you believe in. Without people like you and Tone and Ugly Old Goat and Murad and the other prominent Bitcoin maximalists, there wouldn't really be anybody warning people away from these altcoins. There is a tremendous amount of people who are promoting the altcoins through Twitter and Facebook and Reddit. I mean, any sort of social media. There's tons of people that have huge financial incentive to promote these projects, and there are very few people that are incentivized to basically tell it how it is, or at least tell a more bearish story about these things. Because what incentive does somebody like you or Tone have to take a look at the fundamentals of altcoins and bash them basically, and look at what is wrong with all of these different projects? There really isn't any incentive that I can see. You're not making any money. Nobody's paying you money to talk bad about these projects or to share your perspective, and you are getting a lot of crap, a lot of hate from people who are passionate about these projects for better or worse reason. There are a lot of people who are very passionate about many of these projects, and when somebody like yourself comes out and tells them that the emperor isn't necessarily wearing any clothes, that can be a very difficult and thankless job. So I do want to first say how much I appreciate you, people like yourself and Tone and Ugly Old Goat, really hammering home what is the real value proposition of crypto and what is different between Bitcoin and all the others. I absolutely consider myself a Bitcoin standard bearer. I invest in Bitcoin. I want to hold Bitcoin for the rest of my life. I think that Bitcoin is going to change the world. Absolutely, in my lifetime. I do not believe in any of the alts. I do not invest in any of the alts. However, I do trade in some of them, and that is because I think they're basically too good to be true. Anytime you find yourself in a scenario where something just feels too good to be true, it is highly likely that that situation will not last for very long. And that's one of the main reasons why I really deep down didn't think that alts would be able to survive this bear market, is because how much money was made in 2017 by buying any alt under the sun, any alt on Binance or Bittrex, and you make a ton of money. That was too good to be true. And I thought that that was the window, and it had closed, and it was never going to come back. Now we are seeing some indicators suggesting strongly that my original impression was wrong, and that we could perhaps be in for another round of this alt mania. And if that is the case, then it is, in my opinion, a once in a lifetime opportunity. For me, I am very much drawn towards a risk reward type of perspective. And when I see a tremendous reward with potential to limit my risk, I am going to have a very, very difficult time passing up on that opportunity, especially if it's something that's entirely legal. So from my perspective, I am thinking that alts, we should be paying very, very close attention to alts right now, because they are at a point where if they can hold these levels of support and follow Bitcoin and get these golden crosses with the 50 and 200 EMAs and break through trend and horizontal resistance, then it could be a round two that I absolutely do not want to miss out on. Anybody that says there's no use case for altcoins has probably never used them to make more Bitcoin. In my opinion, that's the number one use for alts is trading them to earn more Bitcoin. It's as simple as that for me. So I will be looking at these things very, very closely and looking to put a small percentage of my portfolio into them in hopes that that they will appreciate against Bitcoin, and then I can take profit into Bitcoin somewhere down the road to increase what I'm holding, that I want to hold throughout what I am thinking is the next bull market. So that's me. And then one other thing I want to clarify that I think Tyler does such a good job of is distinguishing what I'm willing to do with my money versus what I would do with somebody else's money. If a friend came to me or a family member came to me and wanted to talk to me about crypto or Bitcoin or investing, I would not tell them to do the same thing that I'm going to do with my money. And that's because I am much more risky. I'm younger, I'm a speculator. I have very good risk management in the sense that I am very comfortable taking on a lot of risk, knowing that if it blows up, I am going to manage my portfolio such that it's not going to necessarily ruin me. So if somebody is coming to me, and some people are right now starting to ask, should I be getting into this thing? You told me a couple of years ago, now I'm ready to listen. I'm telling them just buy Bitcoin. Just buy Bitcoin and hold, and you're going to be very happy. Because they're not going to be actively in there buying and selling, and Bitcoin is what I believe in. That's what I would recommend. I wouldn't recommend anything else to anybody, but I would buy other things with my own money if the technicals are giving me a buy signal and I'm looking at the risk reward is extremely asymmetrical. Then I'm going to go ahead and take that position. Bitcoin is the fastest appreciating asset that the world has ever seen, and that's over the last 8 to 10 years. In 2017, it returned about 2,000%, whereas alts, for the most part, destroyed that. Ethereum returned somewhere around 1,200%, and XRP was somewhere in the range of like 8,000%. These are numbers off the top of my head that I might be mistaking, but they're roughly accurate from what I remember. And that type of return is so unique that there's no other situation. Basically, there has never been another situation where it's possible to make those kind of returns in such a short amount of time. It's not logical in any sense of the word, and it's very hard to look at that and say that this isn't too good to be true. So as long as the technicals are suggesting that it is time to be long, then I am going to be looking to take very small positions because the returns have shown the propensity to be so much greater than anything else that's ever occurred. So that, to me, is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I want to take advantage of if the trading system that I use gives me those signals that I need to enter. So that's just my personal philosophy about this whole situation, about Bitcoins versus alts, and why I may invest or trade in alts, but only invest in Bitcoin. So that covers my perspective. And now we want to take a look at Litecoin specifically as it relates to the price action that we are seeing with Bitcoin. So I do have a chart pulled up. You said you had a couple yourself, Tyler. Do you want to start, or do you want me to kick it off?
Why don't you go ahead and start and show me some of those charts that you had been working on, and then I'll pull up a couple of mine.
Sounds great. And I will be sharing the screen this time. Hopefully remembering every step. I am keeping an eye on the live chat, trying my best. So if you guys are having trouble seeing the screen, then if you let us know there, I should be able to catch that before too long. So seeing some really, really interesting stuff right now. And this chart has changed significantly since I first posted it, just tweeted this out. Looks like 3 hours ago. And
now that's coming up. It's not full screen.
Okay, I see that. Now let me try to zoom, because I did have to restart and this chart was erased. So I'll just zoom in a little bit and hopefully that will work. Okay, you able to see it pretty good now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So was taking a look at the Litecoin USD pair as it relates to Bitcoin USD, and it is fairly common to have Litecoin as a leading indicator for Bitcoin. So anytime that Litecoin is making a move and Bitcoin hasn't yet, that is something that I'm always very interested in and have grown to trust this pretty well, that Litecoin tends to lead Bitcoin both up and down. In terms of why that is, I'm really not sure, outside of it makes sense for it to be leading this bull run because it is going to be going through a halving at the end of this summer, about maybe 9 months or so before Bitcoin. So since it is going to be halving here soon, it does make sense at this point that it would be leading the market in the upward direction. So that's what I've been keeping a close eye on here over the last maybe 12 to 16 hours. As I was seeing Bitcoin find support off of the 200 EMA on the 4-hour chart and expecting it to bounce back up to the 50 EMA here on the 4-hour at about 81, 80, 50 or so was what I was expecting to see. And then what I saw out of Litecoin had me sort of reconsidering my original perspective. So as you guys know that have been following on, I am most focused on the moving average crossovers. We were taking a close look at the 9 and the 50 every time the price tested the 50, but did not get a bearish crossover with the 9. We continued to rally. And as soon as we did get that bearish crossover, the price sold off and the target was the 200 EMA. So that was reached. And now, after we returned to the 200 EMA, I was expecting a bounce back to the 50 EMA. And I was expecting this to hold as resistance because the 50 EMA had rolled over and was trending down significantly and was in confluence with this horizontal area of resistance as well as this trend line. So I was really expecting this area to hold as resistance after we bounced from the 200 EMA. Now looking at Litecoin, we see something different. Instead of finding resistance from the horizontal, the trend line, or the 50, what happened? It smashed right through. So starting back here, it tests the 200 EMA after getting this bearish cross, and then it is more bullish. It doesn't stick around. It immediately supports higher, closes above the 50 EMA here, this is what got me very intrigued. I made an update on TradingView last night saying to keep an eye on this action. If Litecoin breaks through here, then I'm going to probably be recanting my projection of a pullback from this area of resistance. So that's what I was looking at last night, and this morning we broke through, had a good close, and then on this candle here, it was a very strong close. That was at 10 a.m. my time, 116. It was the price that was, we had wicked down. We had wicked off of that price back in here. Here we close above it. So I'm viewing that as really strong. And then here we smash through that. And it's looking like it is off to the races. It breaks through the trend line, the horizontal, gets a bullish crossover here, and has the 50 EMA turning back up. Fully bullish posture, breaking through major boundary lines. That is what led to me questioning in a tweet whether or not Litecoin is blazing a trail. Should we expect the same action from Bitcoin, a crossover with these moving averages and a breakthrough of 8,200 resistance? That is what I was inclined to expect moving forward until this last 4-hour candle closed. That would have been at 2 o'clock my time. Let's take a look at what happened here. I was watching and really wanting to see this close above the 50 EMA. And I really wanted to see it close above 80.49 as this prior area of horizontal resistance. For about 3 hours, this candle was up here, kind of how we were looking at right here, threatening to close above the 50 EMA. And if it did that, the next step would be a bullish crossover with the 9. Instead, it pulled back sharply off of this 50 EMA, which is exactly what I would expect to see if this area was going to hold as resistance. Like, this is exactly what I want to see, is a wick coming down short of a shooting star doji. Is basically an ideal sort of setup. Seeing that coming off of a confluence of resistance is very powerful as far as I'm concerned. And then on Litecoin, what do we see here? It had an even worse close. It had mashed up to 121.50 or so, and then it pulls all the way back and actually has a bearish close and actually loses value during this 4-hour stretch. So that is definitely very interesting. And now what I'm going to be looking for is very simple. And this is kind of what I'm liking to see, is price stuck between a couple moving averages. That's something that I really like to see, more so even than when you get price pulling into a cross. Having price squeezed in between a cross is something that is a really good setup for me. So I think that there are two things that could happen. I mean, of course, price could go up or it could go down. And what I'm waiting for is to see if we can close above this 50 EMA before closing below the 9 EMA. Whichever one comes first is what I will be expecting the next move to follow. So if this candle here closes above the 50 EMA, then I would be expecting it to follow through and close above 82.70 or so, and follow that with a crossover with the 9. It could also consolidate just sideways while these continue to squeeze, and then that could provide a really good entry. If we squeeze here, these cross right as this breaks through this trend line, that could provide a very good entry that I would probably have to take. And if that doesn't happen, if we stay in here and fail to get back above this 80.75 area, we'll call it. If this continues to act as resistance, then I would be watching for a close below this 9 EMA and would be expecting this action to follow. So this is what I've been calling for the last few days, and it's something that it's just basically, you know, an idea. This is what my mind is seeing. It's not, and it's something that I'm always willing to adjust based on new information. So when this thing came up and retested the top of the area here, I was starting to reconsider my analysis because of what I'd seen out of Bitcoin. Just because I'd drawn these arrows a couple days ago doesn't mean I can't change my mind due to new information coming about. And seeing the way that Litecoin smashed right through this similar area of resistance, that is new information. And with my experience of it being a leading indicator, that is new information that I absolutely wanted to take into account. So instead of really being confident in this next move down here, instead I'm staying neutral. I'm waiting to see what happens between the 9 and the 50 EMA. Below that 9 EMA, I'm expecting down. If we get above it, I'm expecting up and higher highs like we saw out of Litecoin. Notice how it made a higher high from this area. Very strong, and that was what made me reconsider my original outlook on Bitcoin, even though it's still progressing pretty much exactly how I had wanted to see it, especially with this wick coming down from resistance, still holding out and waiting to see what's going to happen in between these moving averages here.
Terrific, great analysis and very interesting. If you want to pull out of the screen share, I will jump on and show you a couple of things that I intuited, but until you actually see it, it's hard to tell. Let me do this again. Okay, and then I will bring this one up. That's the XAU. I was just watching gold because some interesting things are happening on gold. We'll get that in a minute. Here is the most recent weekly Bitcoin chart. Again, very similar to yesterday, although we went running up on a short-term basis not too long ago, but now we've pulled back, as Sawcruhteez just suggested, and I think that's important. This is the daily, and you can see all of these days above this phase line, and on the weekly, we're now going into the third week, almost ending the third week, struggling at that, and we have this 9. So this analysis, I will use any tool or any correlation that is working. What I like to do, though, is test and see how long does that correlation last, and is something correlated like Litecoin to Bitcoin in certain types of markets or in all markets. My thinking has been that, well, rather than discussing that, I'm going to pull up some charts. First one I'm going to do is Litecoin to Bitcoin. And let's go do a daily chart. So this is Litecoin divided by Bitcoin. So when it's going up, that means that it is outperforming Bitcoin. When you do this kind of analysis, if you go Litecoin divided by Bitcoin and you get a flat line across the chart, then you know that they're perfectly correlated. If your numerator, in this case Litecoin, the chart of it is moving up, that means obviously Litecoin is doing better than Bitcoin, and just the opposite. That's a very simple idea with huge implications, because what you see all the way from late April is Bitcoin spanking Litecoin. all the way down. So I look at these two things and I say, if Bitcoin is going, Bitcoin can go up faster than Litecoin can go up, and that's what this is, because Bitcoin was going up throughout this whole period. Just to prove it, we're going to go back to the beginning of April on a daily chart, and Bitcoin's going up this whole time. So when we look at Litecoin versus Bitcoin, the first thing I see is that they are inversely correlated at times when Bitcoin is going up, and positively correlated so that Litecoin actually outperforms at certain times. So that's interesting to me. That means you've got to, if you're going to use this kind of a technique, then what you need to do is you need to understand there will be periods such as the all-time top in Bitcoin, in which as Bitcoin was dropping throughout the bear market, Litecoin was dropping more. This is a weekly chart. And this is the beginning of 2018, so the end of 2017. Now, right at the very top, which is right here, December the 17th, approximately, we went for 6 weeks where they were equally correlated. In other words, the Litecoin is the numerator and Bitcoin is the denominator. We went flat. But then Litecoin began to outperform and then has underperformed ever since, until right here in December, where the all-time lows were hit in Bitcoin. So throughout this whole period, Bitcoin was doing much, much better than Litecoin. Then Litecoin began doing better than Bitcoin as we went up. Remember what Bitcoin was doing during this period on a weekly basis. From December, it was going up, but Litecoin was going up faster because Bitcoin was trapped under these two red lines between 3,000 and 4,200, and then later on, after Litecoin, and now I'll just show Litecoin instead of as, this is Litecoin in US dollars. Litecoin was going up faster than Bitcoin. Bitcoin, there was reluctance for it to go up, and Litecoin took advantage of that and kept going up. Now, that does not, everything I just said does not in any way diminish the very important point that Sawcruhteez just made. Here's the daily again, which is that right here, right now, after a period of consolidation of Litecoin being the numerator and Bitcoin being the denominator, we went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days in which they were doing the same thing, basically. Their movement was the same. But then we got the last 2 days of this huge breakout, which when you look on the Bitcoin chart has not occurred. So, and as you've just heard Sawcruhteez say, it's very clear that Litecoin is broken out to the upside. It got pounded after it did that breakout, but it's still in a much better position technically than Bitcoin. So the big question is now, what does this mean for Bitcoin? Because as I said, if Bitcoin is rolling over, which is one of the two possibilities Sawcruhteez is talking about, then you can bet your sweet booty that Litecoin's going to not only drop from where it is, but drop very significantly. So this is a fascinating tug of war to me between these two coins, Bitcoin and Litecoin. But the overall point, I think, is an important one. Litecoin can lead, but more often than not, Bitcoin leads, and its percentage moves relative to Litecoin in a down market are much smaller than Litecoins. Therefore, if you are playing Litecoin, you do not want Bitcoin to go down, unless you can come up with some rationale why they can separate ways and Litecoin can go up and Bitcoin can go down. But it would take you a very long time to convince me of that fact. Any comments on any of that?
Yeah, leave it on screen share there.
I will do that. Okay, great.
If you could pull back up the LTC BTC chart, that thing is just absolutely fascinating and is pretty much yelling at me to go ahead and get long. So I'm seeing a inverse head and shoulders there that developed from the end of April and just basically confirmed here yesterday. And I am also loving that the confirmation closed above that TDST level, the setup trend line. And then now we are getting a green 3 above a green 2. So that to me is a very, very attractive entry. Furthermore, knowing that it will be going through a halving coming up here in a couple months, and that it is still significantly below prior all-time highs. I'm just remembering this off the top of my head, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but when Litecoin halves and Bitcoin does not have, so Litecoin will have in August, and then Bitcoin will still be about 6 to 9 months away from halving. During that 6 to 9 months, Litecoin should be above 0.02. I think the number is 0.022. It would be the proper exchange rate based on the new supply of Litecoin. So when Litecoin halves, and it does so months before Bitcoin, there will be an adjustment in terms of how much Bitcoin supply is there and how much Litecoin supply is there. And if that's the only metric that you use to value Litecoin, then the figure that you should get is about 0.022, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Right about here.
Right about at the prior all-time high levels. So for me, I am definitely wanting to be long going up into the halving and being basically heavy on Litecoin during the month that it is already halved, and looking to get back into Bitcoin when it gets very closer to its halving date. I say get back into Bitcoin. I'm always in Bitcoin. It's just I'll be adjusting my portfolios there, and then my allocations. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is on this weekly chart is that recent, about 3 candles ago, 3-4 candles ago, that is like pretty much an ideal entry signal for me. And let's go through why. So we had the trend turn bullish back in February. The long-term moving average rolled up, and we got crossovers and we smashed right through, but I wasn't buying there because we had a massive perfective green 9, and we're at right about very near that other TDST level to the left that was waiting at about 0.013 or so. So I was not buying here. I feel like this thing got away from me. I want to wait for a correction, and often it will be months will go by before the correction really happens that you want to buy. And that's kind of what we've been seeing with Bitcoin, where there's been months where the trend turned bullish, but I'm waiting for a reversion to a mean. I'm waiting for the price to pull back and test that trend and have it prove to me that it really is now reversed and it is now bullish. And that's exactly what happened about 2, 3, 4 weeks ago with Litecoin. We pull all the way back to that moving average, which is now trending up, and it perfectly acts as support and is in confluence with that TDST level, that setup trend line. So seeing a pullback come and test a newly reversed long-term moving average is one of my most ideal entries, because it's kind of a situation where the price did get away from us, and it did show that it was a strong breakout. It had a lot of follow through, had a lot of momentum that took a while for it to slow down and correct. And then once it did correct, it found support right where it's supposed to, right at the trend, the moving average that we have to determine long-term trends. So seeing that action on that red 6 and the red 7, and then this recent crossover with the short and the medium, and now the medium is flattening out, and the now we're on a green 1, a price flip above that red 7. All of that to me is yelling at me that I need to be long this chart. Whatever it is, this is a very, very interesting setup on both the weekly and the daily. And that's really what I want to see is multiple higher time frames lining up, signaling the same thing. So even looking at Litecoin versus USD and seeing that could be an interesting position. This one looks even more so just based on the different indicators that we just looked at there. So yeah, definitely some very, very interesting charts that I'm glad you pulled up.
Great. Yeah, this is, remember when Sawcruhteez is saying that all these technicals are lining up to buy this chart, he's not saying to buy Litecoin. This is Litecoin divided by Bitcoin chart. So as a commodity trader, or as someone that's attempting to play a spread, what this chart is if I were to go $1 million long in the Litecoin market and $1 million short in the Bitcoin market, this chart is telling you you should make a lot of money, as opposed to saying this is a good buy for Litecoin. This is a good buy for Litecoin relative to Bitcoin. And that's a very important distinguishing thing. Now, this is the Litecoin chart in US dollars. And it is also looking very bullish. In fact, it's obviously going to be a lot more bullish than Litecoin versus Bitcoin. But it is a very different chart. And it's very important not to get those concepts mixed up. Would you agree with what I just said, Sawcruhteez?
Yes, and I think you bring up a extremely valuable point that I have not really heard many people talk about at all, and that is using altcoins to hedge. And like you said, going potentially $1 million long Litecoin and $1 million short Bitcoin would be a very interesting trade that would protect you in the sense that if the market does collapse and go down, well, now you've got a big short position on Bitcoin. You could cover that Litecoin position and hope the market keeps moving in that direction and make a good amount of money. If it does rally, the Bitcoin position will lose, but the Litecoin position should make money more than the Bitcoin position is losing because it has been moving faster. As long as it's moving up against Bitcoin, that tells you the value in the Litecoin long should outweigh the loss in a Bitcoin short. And the way that these pairs work, in the sense that often one or the other will lead or follow, and then often one will be bearish or bullish, in the sense that Bitcoin could be moving up and altcoins could be bearish versus Bitcoin and vice versa, these present some tremendously attractive opportunities to build some very large positions that are fully hedged, that are not there really isn't any corollary in traditional markets, because cryptos are so highly correlated, and then some just move significantly faster than others. So if you can get really good at understanding the relationship of, say, just one pair very closely of Litecoin and the US dollar, and Bitcoin and the US dollar, and then Litecoin versus Bitcoin, just get very, very, very comfortable and familiar and confident with those pairs, and understanding when, well, man, over the last month, every time that Bitcoin has gone up, Litecoin has gone up more, and what sort of opportunities does that present? Or maybe it's vice versa. I think that that's one of the best ways to take money out of this crypto market and keep it for yourself, is focusing very, very closely on one pair in the USD pairs as well as the Bitcoin pair, and then noticing the relationships. When the market moves in the USD pair, what's happening in the Bitcoin pair? For me, I follow very, very closely Bitcoin and Ethereum, because Ethereum is just such a dream to trade technically. It has just moved. It's been the most technical chart that I've basically ever seen. So I really enjoy tracking it and following it. So I'm always following BTC USD, ETH USD, and then ETH BTC, and keeping a very close eye on when Bitcoin goes up, what happens with ETH BTC? When Bitcoin goes down, what happens with ETH BTC? When Bitcoin is flat, what's happening with ETH BTC? And really diving deep and knowing that relationship like the back of your hand can provide some opportunities that you would never be able to figure out otherwise, unless you'd been very closely tracking that pair for days, weeks, months, and years. So I think that was a very, very good point about potentially hedging opposed to just longing LTC, BTC, and something that I think everybody should take some time to consider for themselves.
Great, thank you. Great observations, and we will do a full vlog on arbitrage, not only in the crypto markets, but just markets in general, because there's so much going on to take advantage of. I think we've got to jump over to S&P real quickly, because you see this enormous move today, which took us back above the long-term moving average, which is still moving down, but it's moved the short term right up through the long-term moving average, and we do have a turn on the intermediate term. So I wanted to see the close today. I did not front run it because these markets are too wild, but the implication of this is that if we stay up here a little bit longer, the long term will turn back up, and we will be in a full bullish stance once again, which is rather remarkable after breaking down this head and shoulders top and breaking through the setup trend line and going for another 4 days down. You would think this thing was going to keep on going down, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 huge days in a row, taking us right back above the long-term moving average. Very bullish action on the S&P 500 today, and we are still 50% long, but we also have got 50% sitting in cash. And do you want to say anything about the S&P chart, Sawcruhteez?
Yeah, I could just say something real quickly on my chart if you want to hop out of there. All right.
Got it.
And
okay.
Sharing screen now. So this on the last time, I think that we took a look at this chart, the price was down around in here, and I was expecting pretty much the same thing that I was looking at with Bitcoin, in the sense that I was expecting a bounce up to test a trend line, and then expecting basically another swing low, and using this to determine the swing target. So this is what I was looking at last time that we had spoken about the S&P. I was expecting this bounce primarily because these MAs had not crossed yet. Seeing price below a golden crossover, this to me looks like a magnet. When the price is down here while the MAs or EMAs are still in a bullish posture or have a golden crossover, then to me that's just acts like a magnet where the price will be attracted back towards that area, and that is when you will get the ideal pull up and into a death cross. So that's exactly what I was expecting to happen, was a bounce from here, and then was looking at a confluence of resistance at the $2,800 level from horizontal and trend line. And at that time, the chart looked something like this, and this thing was moving down fast. The 50 EMA was moving down fast, and the 200 had started to roll over. So I was really expecting us to bounce up to here and have this 50 just come cut straight through the 200 and have that 200 continue rolling down. That is what I was expecting. If that occurred, I very likely would have opened a short position. I had exited all long exposure, and if this was going to bounce into a death cross on the 4-hour with all that confluence of resistance, then I would be looking at selling right here, and the stop would have been just probably less than 50 points away. It would have been a very low risk entry. Instead, what happens is we blast right through the 200 and continue rallying right through the 50. Now the 200 has started turning back up, and the 50 is turning up as well. So now it is back into a fully bullish posture, and this is a very bullish action. Like Tyler said, when the price does fall below here and spend some time down here and allows these to start rolling over, you really do expect a lower high and then another lower low. When that doesn't happen, when it just smashes right through those, then that is sort of like, I call it like a peek through, like the price peaked below this 200 EMA, but wasn't able to stay below. So I view these peek through type of movement of a trend continuing. The price peaked down here to see what's it like. How are we going to do? Are we going to be able to stay below these moving averages long enough to get a crossover? And they didn't. They dipped their toes in the water and realized that the water's temperature was not to the liking of the bears, and it busted right back through here. So that's something to me that's very important. When you get these converging and failing to cross, that to me indicates a continuation of the trend. So I am definitely kind of sitting on my hands here, wondering what in the world's going on, and will be not very interested in reopening long exposure unless we take out this high in here at about 29.59. Noticing that this 50-week EMA has held as support is something else that is very interesting. We did close below it. That was another reason why I was expecting this sort of bounce and a pullback continuation. I was expecting all the way back down here eventually, based on this close below, if the moving averages continued to roll over and get those bearish crosses. Didn't happen. Instead, we get this engulfing candle that smashes way back above this 50 EMA, which is very bullish, similar to what we saw down in here. Have a close below, and then it respawns resoundingly with the bulls taking over very, very quickly and sharply and with conviction. So I'm very intrigued by what's been going on here. The other thing that I'm wondering about is if the stock market's turning back bullish, then shouldn't we see gold reverse and not be able to rally through the major area of resistance that it's been stuck under for years at the 1350, 1360 area or so. So right now, these are both markets that I think are good opportunities to sit and wait. And as soon as they do decide which way they're going to move, they're going to do it in a very big way. So that's my thoughts there.
Yeah, that's great, and I completely agree with that. I was very nervous about even holding on to 50% in the equity market, but I was going by Consensio, and Consensio had not my Consensio, which is much shorter than most people use. I use the 2, the 7, and the 30, or the 3, 7, and 30, depending on if it's crypto or the stock market. And that had us 50% out, but boy, everything else looked like just the way Sawcruhteez described it, that Fu Manchu was ready to pull the ripcord or pull the lever, and we would go into potentially a bear market. We still might. But the point is that this reversal this week is awe-inspiring, because the news wasn't all that great. In fact, off the employment report this morning, we had been messing around before the report came out at 8:30 with the futures market, and then the futures market sold off, and the dollar sold off big, and interest rates on the 10-year yield dropped from 212 all the way down to 206, new lows on this move in interest rates. So the dollar dropped, interest rates dropped, the stock market looked actually was going negative in the futures market, but that was all an hour before the actual open of the market. By the time that hour went by, everything had stabilized, and the market was up 300 and some points for most of the afternoon, closed up 290 or something like that, but it was clear across the board. So a remarkable response, and it just shows how nervous investors are in all asset classes, and I attribute that to the macroeconomic unknowns that everybody's nose is out there, but it's like whistling by the graveyard. You don't want to whistle too loud because something might come jumping out at you. And that's the way these markets are all acting, including the crypto market, in my opinion. I have run out of time. We did not get to the gold market, which had a big pop today because of what was going on with the dollar, but then it settled back and did not really make, in my estimation, any real headway, although silver did. We also want to talk about the oil market and the natural gas market, which we will do, but I think that's going to have to wait till either Sunday, maybe Sunday evening. We will do another show depending on what the cryptos are doing going into the weekly close on Sunday night. Maybe we can take a look at the futures market, which will be opening in all the markets like the gold market, and later on in the evening, right before Bitcoin and the cryptos close, we will start getting some S&P kind of futures numbers. So with that, I knew we were going to take a while because this was fascinating about the relationship between Litecoin and Bitcoin and what actually happened today between the two of them and each individually. And nothing is resolved in my mind, but I think we've given it our best shot. So thank you very much, Sawcruhteez. Great work as usual. And until next time, adios.
All right. It was great chatting with you. And sounds like you got to run. There was one question that I saw in chat that I wanted to field very quickly. If you've got to log out.
Great.
Free, but he asks, I have $2,000 USD. Should I invest in cryptocurrency? I appreciate straightforward answers. Seems to be difficult to get feedback. So to that individual, I wanted to say that my straightforward answer would be no. If you are asking that question, then the straightest forward answer you can hear is no. You should instead be taking time to learn about cryptocurrency. Invest your time to learn about Bitcoin and potentially the others, to the point where you can tell me why you should be buying crypto or not buying crypto. If you're asking others to answer that for you, then absolutely you should not be buying, is my opinion. And then if you do decide that that you do believe in the value proposition, you do understand the fundamentals, and you do want to move forward with an investment into crypto, then absolutely only invest as much as you are willing to lose. If that $2,000 is all that you have and is really going to hurt you if you lose it, then don't invest more than 100 or 200. Okay, keep it very simple. Always manage your risk, and always start by educating yourself and learning, opposed to just blindly throwing money in or out of an investment. So I wanted to give my straightforward answer to that, gentleman. I appreciate everybody taking the time to tune in, and for everybody chiming in the chat. We appreciate you all, and thanks again, Tyler, for everything that you do. We will be taking Saturdays off, so don't expect us tomorrow, but we will be back on Sunday around the same time, which should be when the futures markets are opening, as well as the commodities markets. So we'll have some more for you then, and until then, it's been a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.